Okay, in this video I'm going to tell you how to successfully prepare for the post tests. Not only prepare for them, but to actually learn the material. So believe it or not, yeah, I'm speaking to you. You are capable of learning this material. It does take work, it does take energy, it does take a commitment, but you can learn this material. Now, yes, there is a high bar. You must earn 80% or higher to even pass this course. But do keep in mind, 20%, that's a lot of wiggle room. So you don't think everything has to be perfect, but do try to rise to your highest potential here. Uh, the expectations aren't extraordinary, but they are college level, and we expect you to rise to those expectations at least an 80% level. And that is really out of respect. You have made the commitment and the time for your education, and your education will mean something if there is at least some degree of accountability and movement towards you learning. So with that said, let's get started on how to prepare. So you begin by just going to the first assigned chapter in the competency you're in. So for competency 5, it's going to be chapter 15. And again, for History 1301 students, it's going to be different because you have different content, but all of these principles apply. So you open it up, and you're going to see a study guide for the required text. Here's the required text. Some of the competencies will have an essay prompt, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit, but I want to address this at first. The material is right here. So you have the required text, you have primary sources, and you have highly recommended videos. I suggest going through these where you see fit based on these questions for extra material. The text is right here, but don't be shy about these videos. These videos will be very helpful, give you an overview and specific information to help you respond to the study guides, the study guide questions. So here's the first step. So there's going to be, I think, 3 to 5 steps here. We'll see. This will be step 1. Get a notebook. And a lot of students ignore this advice, but the students that do not usually do very well in this course. Get a notebook and handwrite these questions. Won't take as long as you think it will. It will maybe take you 10 minutes at the most. And in your notebook, or your notebook dedicated to this course, write each question on the top of a page, go to another page, write this question here. You most likely will never need a whole page for any one of these questions, so maybe a half a page, but definitely give yourself enough room. Handwrite them out. And the reason why you want to handwrite them out is if you simply copy and paste all of this and put it into a Word document and put some space in between each of these questions and then type some notes out, you're not really going to be paying attention too much to the specifics and to the particulars of the topic. So handwriting it will begin to get your mind aware of the material. So that's step 1. Handwrite the questions out. Once you have that done, then you're ready to take to begin the material. So you go here, and it opens up to this web page, the American Yawp. A very well done website that is basically assigned for this course, and you go through it. And so you basically have this: what questions did Reconstruction seek to answer for the nation? So you're going to here, and what you're going to notice is that there basically, the answers to many Reconstruction questions hinged on the concepts of citizenship and equality. Notice how it says many, right? So some students will just write that down, and that'll be their response. That is below 80%. So what does that even mean? Concepts of citizenship and equality. That's a nice thing to quote, but that's not the entire question, right? That's not the entire response. So as you keep reading, and this idea of, when you see in the text what it means to be a citizen during the Reconstruction era, post-Civil War. It's basically what the Reconstruction is. It's reconstructing after the Civil War. jot that down. And so, I mean, to give you one particular example of what that might mean is the 14th and 15th Amendment are going to help define what citizenship actually means in this country, as well as equality, right? That's one part of the questions. There are other questions that you can kind of look at throughout here that will make themselves available to you if you give it a read. Now, what sometimes students do is they fish for answers. Those students usually don't do very well. Take the time. Yes, it does take time. It might take you a couple of hours to read through an entire chapter, maybe less, maybe a little more. But take the time to read it with your questions, handwritten questions right there. So what I'm on is step 2. So this is step 2, reading it with your study guide. And do handwrite your notes. If you handwrite your notes, you're going to begin becoming more aware of what the major concepts are and the expectations of this particular chapter. Once you were done, moving on to step 3. So in your notebook, you've addressed all 12 of these questions and you're ready to go, right? What I would suggest doing from there is stopping and moving on to something else. That would be step 3. And this is why cramming doesn't particularly work, because sometimes what is usually required with learning effectively is a night's sleep. So what happens when you sleep is you dream, and what dreaming basically is your mind organizing memory into specific connections within the brain to establish it to firm short-term memory and or long-term memory. So sleeping on it helps. Coming back to the material the next day, get some note cards. And on one side, write down the question again. And on the other side, write down some examples and or a brief summary of how to respond to that. So for each question, it's going to take you a little bit of time, but if you take the time, this is where the learning really kicks in. Get your 12 note cards, and I would get 4x6 note cards for this. You don't want the little ones, the 3x5. So 4x6s would be helpful here because sometimes there'll be, some meaty information with some of these. Then, on occasion, before you take the post test, you're going to drill yourself. Flip it over and see if you could begin after a couple of rounds of drilling yourself with these cards, just like you did with multiplication tables and division tables, perhaps, if the stuff begins to sink in. Not all of it will, but you will have a grasp of it. Now, why should you pay attention to these questions? These questions, for the post test, some of these questions will be randomly selected. Roughly per chapter, 5 of these questions, 3 to 5 of these questions per chapter during the post test will be randomly selected for you to respond to. They're all in the test bank, so you don't know which ones will be randomly selected. I don't know which ones will be randomly selected. So sometimes students try to think, which was the most important question? They're all important. That's why they're there. So prepare for all of them as if you will respond to all of them. If you respond to all of them, a lot of these questions are related to each other. So responding to one question will help you respond to another question on occasion, more often than not, right? And so note here, right? Sometimes students don't read this, but right here, as you read the chapter and view the videos, take notes on the following questions. Be sure to provide specific examples from the text in your responses. Your response should be at least 1 to 2 paragraphs, right? And a paragraph is generally 5 to 6 sentences. So that's a guideline. Some might be, just 1 paragraph. Some might be 2. Usually you're not going to write more than 2 paragraphs, right? And so basically it's a guideline. If you find yourself writing just 1 brief sentence to any of these questions, that's just probably a indicator that you need to go back to the material and do a little more research, right, on some of these questions. Okay, so moving on to the essay prompt. So, for the short answer questions and the essay prompt, you are not submitting these to me in a Word document. What's going to happen is when you go to take the post test, go take the post test down here, and you've opened Blackboard in Lockdown Browser. Click here. So let me show you what happens if you try to. It asks you for a password. If you are in Lockdown Browser, so I'm in Chrome right now, so it's asking me for a password, it will not open up for you. Right? The password is opening up Blackboard through the Lockdown Browser. That's the password. Okay. Okay, so where are we at here? So when you take this post test, those questions will randomly selected. You're expected to prepare for all of them, but you're not going to respond to all of them during the exam. They'll be randomly selected. This is the place where you will respond to it. So for sure, that essay prompt will show up in there. And at least 5 questions for Chapter 15 for my U.S. History 1302 students. You're going to start in History 1301, you're going to start with Chapter 1. But will appear. When you are done with Chapter 15 for History 1302, then you're going to move on to Chapter 17. But let's go back to Chapter 15 because this one is the one that has an essay prompt. So every competency, one of the chapters will have an essay prompt. That changes from semester to semester. This semester, Reconstruction is being targeted for that, for the essay prompt. Now, the following, let's just read the instructions. The following essay prompt will be required for you to respond to during the post test. Your response must refer specifically to the assigned readings, and I will look for that. I know it's in those chapters, in the videos and the primary documents. So please only refer to that. If I see information coming from other sources, that is a good way of probably not getting an 80% or higher on that particular essay prompt. Be sure your response is aligned from Chapter 15 study guide. So this is responding to these thoroughly is going to really help you develop an essay here, right? So your response should be 5 to 8 paragraph essays. So the essay prompt is discuss the questions of Reconstruction sought to answer for the nation. Within your discussion, identify and describe the 3 phases of Reconstruction. Finally, describe the promise and hope of Reconstruction and its eventual demise. So I will have a lecture on Blackboard Collaborate, most likely on Wednesday night. So please join me if you can, but we'll see if we can have a near consensus of the class of when we can meet up on an evening to go through some of this material. So yeah, you're going to get the information here. You're also going to find a lot of good information within these videos. So go through these videos to see if there's some information in there that can help you out, to help you respond there. What I'm looking for is, one, if the essay is thoroughly responded to. So make sure you understand what the essay prompt is really asking. Don't skip parts of it. So within your 5 to 8 paragraph essay, discuss the questions Reconstruction sought to answer for the questions for the nation. See if that has been responded to. I will give you very specific information during the lecture that will be posted through Blackboard Collaborate. So please join me again if you can. Make sure that this is addressed here. Within your discussion, identify and describe the 3 phases of Reconstruction. Finally, describe the promise and hope of Reconstruction and its eventual demise. Now, to prepare for this one, you're going to, first and foremost, take notes. So take notes on that. Get as many examples as you're going through the reading to help you respond to that. I highly suggest in your notebook to hand write that essay prompt out so it helps get into your mind a little bit more. So as you come across information that's in the text or in a video that is saying, here is a question that was sought to be answered, or here are some questions people living at that time were grappling with or dealing with. And then if you've handwritten that, you will be like, oh yeah, that had something to do in the essay prompt about that, right? Those kinds of things, right? So handwrite it out. Take notes as you are reading. Just examples. Some of those examples might apply once you're done preparing, you might realize, oh, that example actually didn't have anything to do with this essay prompt, so I'm going to scratch that out. Once you have taken your notes, then it's time to organize your notes into perhaps an outline, right? And your outline can be something as simple as, well, this will be Roman numeral number 1. Discuss the questions of it. So I'm going to bullet point my examples and any kind of summary I can do underneath that Roman numeral. Roman numeral 2 is right there, right? Discuss within your discussion, identify, basically I would just write the 3 phases of Reconstruction and put some notes under there. And then finally, describe the promise and hope of Reconstruction and its eventual demise, right? So that would be Roman numeral 3, and underneath that, your summary to respond to that with specific examples. So that's step 3. So step 1, handwrite it. Step 2, take notes. And again, a lot of your notes, if you've done this already, a lot of your notes might just come straight from your responses to these, your prepared responses in your notebook to these specific questions. You might have to briefly go back through the text to help respond to it, and then go through some of these videos. All right, some of these videos are pretty good too. Right, this guy right here, he's a great guy. Hey there, students. He always says that, and he always has his coffee right there. All right, so you might get some good information in there to help you respond to that specific essay prompt there. Okay. Step 3 is to practice writing this essay. Now that you've got an outline, it doesn't have to be a beautiful outline. It might be, it's not something you have to submit. So sometimes when you take, an English class, they make everything very specific. Make the outline in any way that works for you. But once you have that outline, then practice writing the essay. Write it once, write it twice, maybe write it 3 times. Not all at once, but in chunks. Write out a little bit here, write a little bit there, go back to it and practice it again. So just like anything, if you were into sports, right, you just don't show up for the game, you got to go to practice, right? So same thing with academics. It takes practice. A students are typically students that practice, take notes, and practice and take notes and practice and take notes, and spend a long time on dedication towards the subject matter in which they enrolled in. Okay, so once you're done with that, then again, move on to the next chapter. So in this one, there's only 2. Some of them will have 3. I think the last competency has 4 chapters, so do be ready for that, right? So make some room. So this one only has 2. This one only has the study guide, required text, right? It has a map here for just to help you out, so kind of take a look at that and refer to it when you're looking at some of these questions. Primary sources and highlight. There's no essay prompt, in other words, for this particular chapter. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Other than that, that's basically all I've got. When you take the post test, you have 3 attempts. I will give you feedback during those post tests, and or we can talk on the phone or meet in my office. So. Thank you guys for sticking around. Now go take the orientation exam. Do get me on Remind if you have any questions or just need some clarification on any of the material I went to, and if you feel like I didn't really address one of the questions, feel free to get me on Remind. I will respond back pretty quickly to you. But if I don't, do email me again. Well, take care, and I will talk with you all later. Bye-bye.